They fired me on the day I was the only one left with root access. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just opened my laptop and logged into something the entire board had forgotten I'd built. 12 hours later, their $38 million system went dark, and no one understood what had just happened except me. My name is Laura Menken, and I've been invisible for 16 years. Not literally. Of course, I show up to work every day at Cybernetics' gleaming Minneapolis headquarters, badge in at 7:30 sharp, grab the same burnt coffee from the third-floor kitchen. People see me, they just don't see me. 43 years old, graying at the temples, perpetually wearing the same rotation of dark blazers that help me blend into the server room shadows. I'm the woman you pass in the hallway without a second glance, the one you assume is here to fix the printer or deliver someone's lunch. Senior Systems Engineer, my business card says, though I haven't had new ones printed since 2015. Why bother? Nobody asks for them anymore. But here's what they don't know: I am the beating heart of this place. Every transaction that flows through our $38 million infrastructure passes through code I wrote. Every automated backup, every load balancer, every failover protocol, I built them all. Back when Cybernetics was just 5 guys in a converted garage in Bloomington, dreaming of disrupting enterprise logistics software. Back when our CEO wore the same Metallica t-shirt 3 days in a row and paid me in equity because the cash had run out. I still have root access from 2007. Same password, even Laura Rocks 2007. I know, terrible security practice, but when you're invisible, nobody thinks to audit your permissions. They've layered so many new systems on top of my foundation that they've forgotten what's underneath. Like painting over old wallpaper again and again until you can't remember what the original walls looked like. The company went public 3 years ago. The garage guys cashed out, bought Teslas and lake houses. New blood flooded in MBAs from Wharton, engineers from Google, designers from Apple. They walk past me in the halls, discussing their innovative cloud-native solutions and AI-driven optimization engines, never realizing they're building castles on infrastructure I hand-coded while they were still in high school. Last month, a new junior developer asked if I was the cleaning lady when he found me in the server room at 9 p.m., running diagnostics on a failing node. I just smiled and said, something like that, then fixed the memory leak that would have crashed their precious new microservice architecture by morning. He never even said thank you. The funniest part, I'm still using the same legacy admin account that nobody knows exists. It's not in their documentation because I wrote the original docs, and they've never done a complete audit. Too expensive, they said, too time-consuming. Why fix what isn't broken? They hired a whole DevOps team last year, 6 guys in their 20s with AWS certifications and Kubernetes expertise, led by some hotshot who keeps talking about infrastructure as code, like it's a revelation. They've been slowly rebuilding everything in the cloud, but they still need my old orchestration system to tie it all together. They just don't know it's mine. I've watched 3 CEOs come and go, survived 5 rounds of layoffs, kept everything running through a ransomware attack in 2019 that would have killed the company if I hadn't built in those backup channels nobody documented. I got a 2% raise that year. The CISO got a corner office. My desk sits in the back corner of the 4th floor, next to the emergency exit. No window, no nameplate, just a monitor from 2012 and a collection of server room keys that IT doesn't even know I have. Sometimes new employees use my desk when they think I'm not there, leaving their Starbucks cups and crumbs behind. I clean them up without saying anything. Because that's what invisible people do. We clean up messes. We keep things running. We make sure the lights stay on while everyone else takes the credit. And we remember everything. Everything changed when Aaron Sloan walked through our doors. 33 years old, Harvard MBA, former VP of engineering at some unicorn startup that burned through $100 million in VC money before imploding. The board hired him as our new CTO with a mandate to modernize our technical infrastructure for the next phase of growth. His first all-hands presentation was all buzzwords and TED Talk energy disruption, transformation, paradigm shifts. He actually used the phrase blockchain adjacent without irony. Our legacy systems are holding us back, he announced, gesturing at a slide showing our network architecture. My network architecture, simplified to the point of meaninglessness. This prehistoric mess needs to go. We're going full cloud native, AI-driven, microservices everywhere. Prehistoric. That's what he called the system that had maintained 99.9% uptime for the last decade. I watched from my usual spot in the back corner as the younger engineers nodded enthusiastically. Of course they loved him, he spoke their language, referenced the right frameworks, dropped names from the right companies. He wore those minimalist sneakers that cost $500 and carried his laptop in a bag made from recycled ocean plastic. Within a month, he'd restructured the entire technical organization. The DevOps team reported directly to him now. He brought in consultants from Accenture to audit our system's 23-year-olds in identical blazers who interviewed everyone except me. When I tried to schedule time with them to explain our backup protocols, they said they were focusing on strategic stakeholders and would circle back if needed. They never circled back. The Monday morning technical meetings I'd attended for 16 years, suddenly I wasn't on the invite list. Streamlining attendees to key decision makers, Aaron's assistant explained when I asked. The Slack channels where we coordinated deployments, I found myself quietly removed, one by one. Even the coffee machine on the engineering floor, the good one with the espresso function, now required a special access code that somehow everyone had except me. Laura, Aaron said when we finally crossed paths near the server room 6 weeks into his tenure. He pronounced it wrong, Laura instead of Laura, like I hadn't introduced myself at 3 different all-hands meetings. What exactly do you do here again? I maintain the core orchestration system, I said. The one that coordinates all our... Right, the legacy stuff. He was already looking at his phone. We'll be sunsetting all that soon. Have you thought about reskilling maybe some cloud certifications? I know a great boot camp. Reskilling, like I hadn't been writing distributed systems since before AWS existed. He hired 3 external DevOps contractors at triple my salary to build the new cloud-native infrastructure. They sat in the conference room with the good views, whiteboards covered in architectural diagrams that looked impressive until you realized they'd forgotten basic things like failover protocols and backup retention policies. When their first deployment failed spectacularly at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, guess who got the emergency call? I fixed it, of course, rolled back their changes, restored service, even wrote a patch to prevent the same failure from happening again. In the post-mortem meeting that I wasn't invited to, Aaron praised his team's rapid response and innovative solutions. My name wasn't mentioned. They started calling it the Sloan Transformation. There were posters in the elevator, updates in the company newsletter, even a dedicated Slack emoji. Every week brought new announcements, partnerships with cloud providers, investments in AI platforms, migrations to technologies that sounded cutting edge, but did the same things my code had been doing for years, just with more complexity and higher costs. I kept finding my access revoked from systems I'd built. Security audit, they'd say, principle of least privilege. Except somehow the 25-year-old contractors had root access to everything while I needed to file tickets to check logs on my own servers. The funny thing about being invisible is that people forget you're there. They have conversations in front of you like your furniture. That's how I learned they were planning to eliminate my position, Aaron talking to HR in the kitchen while I refilled my coffee 2 feet away. Once the migration's complete, we won't need the legacy roles, he said, grabbing oat milk from the fridge. Q4 reduction in force, clean slate for 2025. Legacy roles, like I was deprecated code to be garbage collected. But here's what Aaron didn't know. What none of them knew, you can replace the entire house, but if you don't understand the foundation, everything eventually collapses, and I still had the keys to the basement. The email arrived at 4:49 p.m. on a Friday. Because of course it did. Subject quick sync, organizational alignment. From HR. No reply at xcybernetics.com. Hi Laura, can you join us for a brief discussion about organizational restructuring conference room 12B, 5:00 p.m. Thanks, Human Resources. 12 minutes notice, not even signed by a real person. I saved my work a patch for a memory leak the DevOps team hadn't noticed yet and walked to the conference room. My hands weren't shaking. After 16 years, you develop a sixth sense for these things. The empty boxes stacked by the freight elevator, the way people avoided eye contact all week, the IT guy who'd asked for my laptop password for routine maintenance. Conference room 12B was the one they used for terminations. no windows, soundproof walls, closest to the parking garage. I'd seen plenty of people make that walk over the years. Never thought I'd be making it myself. Aaron was there, of course, fidgeting with his sustainable water bottle. Next to him sat someone from HR, Katie or Kathy, one of those interchangeable young women who spoke in corporate euphemisms and smiled while destroying lives. A manila folder lay on the table between us. My name typed on a label that was slightly off-center. "Laura, thanks for joining us," maybe Katie said, her voice pitched in that fake sympathetic tone they must teach in HR school. "As you know, cybernetics is evolving to meet the challenges of a dynamic marketplace." I sat down, said nothing, let them fill the silence with their rehearsed speech. "As part of our digital transformation initiative," Aaron jumped in, clearly eager to get this over with, "we're streamlining our technical infrastructure and moving toward a more agile, cloud-first operating model. Which unfortunately means," maybe Katie continued, "we're eliminating several legacy positions, including yours, effective immediately." Legacy. There was that word again. "Your contributions over the years have been appreciated," Aaron said, though he looked like the words physically pained him. "But we need team members who can embrace modern methodologies and drive innovation forward." I almost laughed. Modern methodologies. Their modern Kubernetes cluster had crashed twice this month because they didn't understand the network dependencies I'd documented 8 years ago. But sure, I was the dinosaur. Maybe. Katie slid the folder across the table. "Your severance package includes 3 months' salary, continued health benefits through end of quarter, and of course we'll need you to sign this NDA. Pretty standard stuff." I flipped through the pages. Standard severance, standard legal threats if I talked about proprietary information, standard non-compete clause, nothing about the root access I still had, nothing about the master SSH keys, nothing about the backdoor I'd built into the orchestration system in 2009 when our previous CTO had locked himself out and I'd had to save the quarterly deployment. "We'll need your laptop, badge, and any company property," maybe Katie continued. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect personal items. You have 15 minutes. "What about documentation?" I asked, my first words since entering the room. "The system dependencies, the backup protocols, the team has everything they need." Aaron cut me off. "We've done a complete knowledge transfer audit. A complete audit that somehow missed the El Mencken legacy admin account, the one hard-coded into the orchestration layer that their entire $38 million infrastructure relied on, the one running scheduled jobs they didn't even know existed." I signed the papers, handed over my badge and laptop, let the security guard Mike, who I'd helped recover his deleted family photos 3 years ago, walk me to my desk. I packed my coffee mug, my emergency sweater, a few personal items, left behind 16 years of sticky notes, documentation, and memories. "I'm sorry about this," Mike whispered as we walked to the elevator. "This place won't be the same without you." He had no idea how right he was. In the parking garage, I sat in my 12-year-old Honda and opened my phone. No farewell email to the team. Aaron had made sure of that. No chance to transition my projects or warn them about the critical maintenance scheduled for Monday morning. Just gone, like I'd never existed. But I still existed in the only place that mattered deep in the code, where they'd never thought to look. I drove home in Friday rush hour traffic, NPR droning about another tech company laying off workers to boost quarterly earnings. My phone buzzed with LinkedIn notifications. News travels fast in Minneapolis tech circles. By the time I pulled into my driveway, 3 recruiters had already messaged me about exciting opportunities. I poured myself a generous glass of wine and opened my personal laptop. The old ThinkPad booted up with its familiar hum, and I navigated to a bookmark labeled Home Network, except it wasn't my home network. It was Cybernetics' administrative panel, accessed through a subdomain they'd forgotten existed, authenticated with credentials they'd never revoked. Everything was there, every server, every service, every scheduled job, the entire orchestration system I'd built, humming along perfectly, blissfully unaware that its creator had just been designated obsolete. I took another sip of wine and started planning. Revenge is a dish best served with clean code and proper documentation. I spent Saturday mapping out everything, not in anger, but with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent 16 years debugging complex systems. My old Linux workstation sat under the dining table, exactly where I'd left it 3 years ago when I'd started working from home during the pandemic. It booted up on the first try I build things to last. The orchestration system's admin panel glowed on my screen, familiar as my own reflection. They'd reskinned the interface with Aaron's modern design language, but underneath it was still my code, still my logic, still my backdoors. I checked the logs first. The Elmenken legacy account had been active every 6 hours like clockwork, running the maintenance scripts that kept their data pipelines flowing. 7 years of uninterrupted service, and not one person had thought to check who owned it. The SSH keys I generated in 2016 were still valid, still had root access to every critical server. Here's what civilians don't understand about IT infrastructure. It's not about the flashy new services or the cutting-edge frameworks. It's about the boring stuff. The cron jobs that clean up temp files, the scripts that rotate logs before the disk fills up, the background processes that nobody notices until they stop working. I pulled up my personal archive, a habit I developed after the ransomware incident. Complete configuration snapshots from the first of every month, encrypted and stored on my own hardware. April's backup was particularly interesting. That was before Aaron's team had started their transformation, when everything was stable and documented, when the system made sense. The revenge plan wrote itself. I wouldn't destroy anything. I'm an engineer, not a vandal. I'd simply restore their system to a point in time when it worked perfectly. Before the cloud migration, before the microservices maze, before Aaron's consultants had turned my elegant architecture into a Rube Goldberg machine. The script was beautiful in its simplicity. First, it would wait until Monday morning, 7:45 a.m. sharp, peak load time, when all the executives would be checking their dashboards for the weekly numbers. Then it would execute a rollback. Every configuration, every service, every routing rule would revert to April 1st, the old reliable setup, before the transformation. Next, it would revoke all the new access credentials and restore the original permission structure, the one where everything required manual approval from the system administrator, me. Finally, it would disable the automated recovery systems they'd built on top of my infrastructure. No failovers, no redundancy, no self-healing, just the raw original system that required someone who understood it to operate it. The beauty was that nothing would actually break. The system would work perfectly if you knew how to operate it, if you had the documentation I'd written over 16 years, if you understood why certain services needed to start in a specific order, why some processes needed manual intervention, why the legacy monitoring tools were checking things their fancy AI-powered dashboards ignored. But they'd thrown all that away when they threw me away. I added one personal touch: a scheduled email to the C-suite from the system notification address. Nothing vindictive, just helpful. Critical maintenance notice system restored to last known stable configuration, April 2024. Original documentation required for operation. Manual intervention needed for all core services. Estimated recovery time without proper knowledge, 1,216 hours. With documentation, 30 minutes. Have a productive Monday. System administrator. The timestamp would show 7:46 a.m., 1 minute after everything reverted. I tested the script in my local environment, watching it execute flawlessly. Clean, efficient, reversible. They could undo everything I'd done if they knew how. If they had the passwords, if they understood the architecture, if they'd valued the person who'd built it all. Sunday afternoon, I drove to my favorite coffee shop in Northeast Minneapolis, the one with the good Wi-Fi and better bourbon selection. I ordered a cortado and a neat pour of Blanton's, opened my laptop, and connected through 3 different VPN layers, maybe overkill. But I'd learned paranoia from the hackers who'd tried to breach our systems over the years. One last review of the script. One last check of the timing. One last moment of doubt: was this really who I wanted to be? Then I remembered Aaron's words: legacy positions, Katie or Kathy's fake sympathy. 16 years reduced to a 15-minute exit interview. I uploaded the script to the orchestration system's scheduled tasks, using the same interface I designed a decade ago. It accepted my credentials without question, slotted the job into the Monday morning queue with all the other maintenance tasks I'd automated over the years. The bourbon burned warm down my throat as I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, they'd learn the difference between legacy and foundational. Tomorrow, they'd understand that some things can't be disrupted, transformed, or made agile. Some things just need to work, and the people who make them work. We're not legacy. We're load-bearing. Sunday evening settled over Minneapolis like a blanket of snow, silent and inevitable. I sat in my home office, a converted bedroom that smelled of old electronics and coffee, watching the system dashboards on one screen while Netflix played muted on another. The orchestration panel showed everything running smoothly. Aaron's team had no idea their digital house of cards was about to revert to its original blueprints. At 9:37 p.m., I composed an email from an encrypted Proton Mail account I'd created years ago for whistleblowing that never materialized. The recipient's every technical manager at Cybernetics, the entire DevOps team, and one junior developer who'd been kind to me once in the break room. Subject System Maintenance Alert Body. Recommend immediate full backup of all systems. Clock is ticking. A concerned friend. I scheduled it to send at 11:59 p.m., late enough that most of them would be asleep, early enough that the paranoid ones might see it. Aaron would dismiss it. I knew him well enough after 6 months he'd built his career on confidence and contempt for anything that smelled like legacy thinking. Anonymous warnings were beneath his notice. His Harvard MBA hadn't included a course on listening to canaries in coal mines. The wine was a decent Malbec, nothing special, but it tasted like freedom. I raised my glass to the empty room, to the servers humming in their climate-controlled rooms across the city, to the code that remembered me even if the people didn't. Here's to being invisible, I said aloud, and to becoming unforgettable. I pulled up the monitoring dashboards one more time. Everything green, everything stable. The DevOps team had actually done decent work on their new services. They just hadn't understood what they were building on top of. Like renovating a house without checking if the foundation was stone or sand. My phone buzzed. LinkedIn again, another recruiter. Another exciting opportunity for a seasoned engineer. I ignored it. Tomorrow, after the news broke, those messages would probably stop. Who wants to hire someone who took down their previous employer's entire infrastructure? But I wasn't taking it down. I was taking it back. The local news droned on about tomorrow's weather snow expected. 3 to 5 inches. Perfect. The commute would be a nightmare. Tensions would be high. Coffee would be desperately needed. And at 7:45 a.m., right when Aaron would be presenting the weekly metrics to the board, everything would change. I opened my personal documentation folder. 16 years of notes and diagrams and emergency protocols. Part of me wanted to send it to them, to prove I wasn't malicious, just forgotten. But no. They'd made their choice when they'd decided my knowledge was legacy. My experience was prehistoric. My existence was redundant. Let them figure it out themselves. Let them learn what I'd learned over 16 years, that complexity is easy, simplicity is hard, and understanding the difference is what separates engineers from architects. My old ThinkPad showed the script sitting in the queue. A time bomb made of logic and legitimate credentials. In 8 hours, it would execute with the same reliability I'd built into everything. No errors, no traces, no way to stop it without knowing it existed. I closed the laptop and finished my wine, then crawled into bed with my phone on silent. Tomorrow would bring chaos, accusations, emergency meetings, and frantic calls to consultants who charged $2,000 a day to state the obvious. But tonight I slept like someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Outside, the snow began to fall, covering Minneapolis in a fresh layer of white. By morning, everything would look different. The city would wake to transformed streets and treacherous commutes. And Cybernetics would wake to discover that some transformations can't be undone with a PowerPoint presentation and a subscription to the latest enterprise software. They'd forgotten that before you can move fast and break things, you need someone who knows how to fix them. They'd forgotten that innovation without understanding is just expensive chaos. They'd forgotten me. By 7:46 a.m. tomorrow, they'd remember. The clock on my nightstand glowed in the darkness 11:58 p.m. In 2 minutes, my warning would land in their inboxes. Most wouldn't see it until morning, when it was already too late. But I'd given them a chance, more than they'd given me. The email sent at midnight exactly, somewhere across the city. Phones buzzed and notification lights blinked. A few night owls might investigate, might even try to run backups, but they wouldn't know what to back up, or why, or what was coming. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would be a snow day in more ways than one. Tomorrow. The prehistoric system they'd mocked would remind them why dinosaurs ruled the earth for millions of years. Not because they were the biggest or the smartest or the most innovative, but because they were built to last. Monday morning arrived wrapped in chaos and covered in snow. 7:45 a.m. I sat in my kitchen, coffee in hand, laptop open to a dashboard I'd built years ago, one they didn't even know existed. The execution log showed my script running perfectly, each line a small revolution. Reverting configuration to 2024-0401 snapshot. Complete disabling automated recovery systems. Complete revoking access credentials. Complete restoring legacy. Permission structure. Complete system rollback successful. Across the city, $38 million of digital infrastructure went silent. Not broken, that would have been cruel and pointless, just waiting. Waiting for someone who understood it to tell it what to do. Like a loyal dog whose master had disappeared. It sat perfectly still, refusing to perform for strangers. My phone started buzzing at 7:48. Unknown numbers, former colleagues, even a few vendors who somehow had my personal cell. I let them all go to voicemail, sipping my coffee while watching the chaos unfold through various monitoring tools they'd forgotten to revoke my access to. The internal Slack workspace, which I could still view through an old integration, exploded with activity. 7:49 a.m. Anyone else having login issues? 7:51 a.m. Entire customer portal is down. 7:52 a.m. I can't access any servers. 7:53 a.m. Urgent. All hands to conference room A now. I pulled up a news aggregator focused on tech companies. Nothing yet. But it wouldn't be long. Cybernetics processed transactions for 3 Fortune 500 companies. Those SLAs had teeth, and they were about to bite. 8:03 a.m. First mention on Twitter. Anyone else having issues with cybernetics? Our entire supply chain dashboard is frozen. 8:11 a.m. The email I'd scheduled arrived in every C-suite inbox. I watched Aaron's assistant's status go from in meeting to emergency, do not disturb. 8:17 a.m. Local tech reporter tweeting, sources say cybernetics experiencing major outage, stock pre-market trading down 7%. I made myself a second cup of coffee and some toast. Through my window, I watched neighbors struggling to dig their cars out of the overnight snow, everyone fighting their own small battles against forces beyond their control. 8:41 a.m. The DevOps team lead, the one who'd called my system prehistoric, posted in their channel, need someone who understands the legacy orchestration layer. Urgent. Does anyone have documentation? I almost felt bad for him, almost. 9:05 a.m. Aaron himself appeared in Slack. Has anyone tried contacting Laura Mencken? HR says she was terminated Friday, but might have documentation. 9:07 a.m. Her LinkedIn says open to opportunities. Should we reach out? 9:08 a.m. Legal says no contact until we understand the situation. The irony was delicious. They needed me, but their own protocols prevented them from asking for help. The same bureaucracy that had made me invisible now kept me untouchable. 9:23 a.m. The first major customer pulled their contract. The sales team's channel erupted in panic. Quarterly numbers, IPO plans, bonuses all evaporating like morning mist. 9:37 a.m. Someone figured out the system had been restored to an April configuration. But how? Who has access to do this? They started hunting through access logs, permission tables, audit trails, but I'd used credentials that were older than their logging systems, ghost keys to a ghost kingdom, wielded by a ghost they'd created. 10:15 a.m. The board called an emergency meeting, through a contact at a competing firm. I learned they were discussing Aaron's future. 6 months into his revolutionary transformation, and he couldn't even keep the lights on. 10:42 a.m. A junior developer, the same one who'd been kind in the break room, posted, found something. There's an old admin account. Elmenken Legacy. It has root access to everything. 10:43 a.m. Who authorized this? 10:44 a.m. According to Git history, Laura created it in 2009. It's been running maintenance scripts for 7 years. 10:45 a.m. The silence in the Slack channel was deafening. Even through text, I could feel their dawning realization. They'd fired the person who literally held the keys to their kingdom, and now the kingdom had locked them out. 1100 hours, Aaron's status changed to offline. Rumor in the channels was he'd been asked to step back while the board investigated. 11:30 a.m. My warning email had been found and forwarded approximately 300 times. IT security was frantically trying to trace its origin while simultaneously begging anyone with system knowledge to come forward. The snow kept falling outside, blanketing the city in pristine white. Inside my warm kitchen, I watched 16 years of being overlooked transform into 12 hours of being desperately needed. But I didn't answer my phone, didn't respond to emails, didn't update my LinkedIn status. I just sat and sipped my coffee and watched $38 million learn the difference between price and value. At 10:03 a.m., an email arrived that changed everything. Not to my personal inbox, I'd expected them to grovel there eventually. This came through the system notification channel, straight to the executive team, the board of directors, and every technical lead in the company, from systemadmin@xcybernetics.com, an email address that shouldn't have been able to send external messages, from a system that shouldn't have been able to compose them. But I'd built that system. I knew all its hidden capabilities. Subject you fired me from systemadmin@xcybernetics.com to all executives at xcybernetics.com, board at xcybernetics.com, tech leads at xcybernetics.com. Body. Since you're probably wondering how to restore your services, I'm attaching 3 files. 1. System Architecture Complete, PDF, the real documentation, not the simplified version your consultants created. 2. Deployment Keys, Original, Text. You'll need these to regain access. 3. Restore, SH. Run this script to bring everything back online. The system has not been damaged. No data has been lost. No security has been compromised. I've simply returned it to a state that requires knowledge to operate knowledge you decided was legacy and prehistoric. A few observations from 16 years of keeping your lights on. Your new microservices architecture has a 23% failure rate you're not tracking because you deprecated my monitoring tools. The AI-driven optimization is costing you $47,000 a month more than my prehistoric load balancing. 3 of your largest customers were planning to leave even before today. Yes, I maintained those relationships too. Advice: try appreciating people before replacing them. P.S. The junior developer in Cubicle 4B has potential. Unlike others, they ask questions and listen to answers. Promote them. Attachment Restore, H. 2.4 KB. Attachment Deployment Keys, Original, TXT. 16 KB. Attachment System Architecture Complete, PDF 3.8 MB. I finished typing it on my local machine, routing it through the same backdoor that had executed the rollback. The system obediently sent it out, digital proof that I still existed in the only realm that mattered. Then I closed my laptop and made a sandwich. The internet exploded within minutes. Someone leaked the email to Reddit, where it hit the front page of r/r Pro Revenge and r/r sysadmin simultaneously. Tech Twitter went feral. Laura Mencken started trending, with hot takes ranging from absolute legend to should be prosecuted. My phone buzzed constantly now. Reporters, recruiters, random techies wanting to buy me a beer. I turned it off and put it in a drawer. This wasn't about fame or job offers. This was about making a point, and the point had been made. By 11 a.m., someone at Cybernetics had swallowed their pride and run my restore script. I watched through my monitoring dashboard as services came back online, one by one, like flowers blooming in fast forward. The entire system restored to full functionality in 28 minutes, just like I'd promised. Local news picked up the story at noon. Minneapolis tech company paralyzed after firing key employee. They'd gotten my age wrong and misspelled my name, but the essential truth was their company had forgotten who kept their infrastructure running and paid the price in public humiliation. The best part: everything I'd done was legal. I'd used legitimate credentials they'd never revoked, executed commands within my documented access rights, sent helpful emails with full restoration instructions. My lawyer, yes. I'd consulted one months ago when I first sensed the winds changing, had laughed when I explained my plan. So you're going to fix their system badly? No, I'm going to fix it perfectly, just manually. Brilliant. Malicious compliance at its finest. By 2 p.m., Aaron's resignation was announced. To pursue other opportunities, the press release said, the DevOps team lead also quietly updated his LinkedIn to seeking new challenges. At 3:47 p.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized, the CEO's direct line. I let it ring. Then came the CFO, the head of HR, even Mike from security, probably calling to apologize. I let them all go to voicemail. I wasn't interested in apologies or offers or negotiations. The time for those conversations was before they'd decided I was disposable, before they'd given me 15 minutes to pack up 16 years, before they'd called me legacy. The internet had opinions. Of course, I was a hero to some, a cautionary tale to others. LinkedIn thought pieces proliferated, the hidden cost of legacy thinking, and why your most valuable employees are often invisible. One popular post simply said, "Find your Laura Mencken, thank them, today." But I wasn't reading any of it. I was in my garage, working on a Raspberry Pi cluster I'd been meaning to set up for years, building something new, something mine, something that no one could call legacy because it had no past, only future. As the sun set over Minneapolis, painting the snow-covered city in shades of amber and rose, I thought about the code still running at Cybernetics. My code. It would outlive Aaron's transformation, outlive whatever buzzword-compliant system they built next, outlive probably everyone who'd sat in that termination meeting. Good code is like that. It endures, it persists, it remembers. Just like the people who write it. By 7:45 p.m., exactly 12 hours after I'd pulled the trigger, the dust had settled. Cybernetics' stock had dropped 18% before recovering to close down only 11%. 3 C-suite executives had resigned. The company had issued a public statement about temporary technical difficulties and ongoing infrastructure improvements. Corporate speak for, "We fucked up spectacularly." I sat in the same chair where I'd watched it all unfold. But now the laptop was closed. The monitoring dashboards were dark. The battle was over. And I'd made my point. The financial damage to Cybernetics was real but not fatal. I'd designed it that way. Lost revenue from 12 hours of downtime, approximately $3.2 million. Cost to their IPO timeline 6 months minimum. Damage to their reputation in the tech community immeasurable. But they'd survived. Because that's what my code did, it survived. Even when the people didn't deserve it. The doorbell rang at 8:15. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman holding an envelope. Not a process server, I'd recognize that stance. She looked nervous, maybe 25. Wearing a Cybernetics fleece that was too new to be broken in. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Minnesota winter air rushed between us. "Ms. Mencken. I'm Sarah, from development. You said I had potential, in the email." "Ah, Cubicle 4B, the one who'd asked real questions." "I remember you," I said. She held out the envelope. "The board wanted me to deliver this. It's an offer, a consulting contract. Very generous. They want you to come back and—" "No, you don't want to look at it." "No need." I studied her face, earnest, scared, smart. "But thank you for coming out in the snow." She shifted uncomfortably. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "How did you stand it being invisible for so long, knowing you were essential but treated like furniture?" The question hung in the cold air between us. I thought about all the possible answers. The anger I'd swallowed, the credit I'd never received, the 16 years of building something that outlasted every person who'd overlooked me. "I love the work," I said finally. "The systems, the problems, the puzzles. I loved it more than I hated being invisible. Until I didn't." She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away for later. "Some advice," I offered. "Please. Document everything. Make yourself irreplaceable but never invisible. And the moment they stop seeing you, not your work, but you start planning your exit, on your terms." Is that what you did? I smiled. No, I waited too long. But you won't make that mistake. She left the envelope on my porch. I threw it away unopened and drove off in a sensible Honda that reminded me of my own. Smart kid. She'd do well, if she remembered the lesson. By 9 p.m., the internet had moved on to the next outrage, the next scandal, the next viral moment of corporate incompetence. My 15 minutes of infamy were already fading. Good. I'd never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to be seen. A text came through from a number I didn't recognize. Laura, this is Mike from security. Just wanted you to know I'm retiring next month. Figured it was time. Thanks for showing an old guy that standing up still matters. Drink sometime. I texted back, coffee, Tuesday, you're buying. The snow had stopped falling. Tomorrow, Minneapolis would dig out, salt the roads, return to normal. Cybernetics would limp along with their restored systems. Probably hire a team of consultants to document what I'd built. Probably spend millions to replace infrastructure that had been working perfectly for years. And somewhere in their gleaming headquarters, in a cubicle in 4B, a young developer would remember that invisible doesn't mean powerless, that legacy isn't always a dirty word, that the people who keep the lights on deserve more than 15 minutes in a box for their belongings. I poured myself one last glass of wine and raised it to the empty room, to the code that would outlive us all, to the sweet satisfaction of proving that some things can't be disrupted, deprecated, or dismissed. They'd fired me on a Friday at 4:49 p.m. By Monday at 7:45 p.m., they'd learned what I was really worth. $38 million and 12 hours of darkness. Cheap at twice the price. Thank you so much for listening to this story of sweet revenge and corporate justice. Where are you tuning in from today? I'd love to hear in the comments below and connect with listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed Laura's tale of technical triumph, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your own thoughts about workplace revenge or times when you felt invisible but proved your worth. Your stories and perspectives make our community richer. Until next time, remember, appreciate the people who keep your lights on before they decide to turn them off.